With all the spring flooding that's been going on in places like Florida, West Virginia, Kentucky, California, and even some in Salt Lake City, Utah, you might be wondering what the flooding risks are in the Boise, Idaho area. When you're thinking of moving to a new place, the flooding risk is an important factor that can often get overlooked. In fact, according to floodlist.com, the housing market in the United States is overvalued by as much as $237 billion due to unpriced flood risks. And unfortunately, as people fled other states to move to less expensive states, they're now learning the hard way that one of the reasons housing was less expensive in some of those states was due to flood risks. So, what about the flood risks in the Boise, Idaho area? Welcome back to my channel. I'm Summer Aston, a realtor in the beautiful Boise, Idaho area, and my team and I help people just like you buy and sell homes in the Boise area. And as you know from my video regarding natural disasters and extreme weather from a few weeks ago, Boise, Idaho does not have very high flooding risks. But as our record snowpack melts from the mountains and fills our rivers and streams, it reminds me that some areas of Boise can flood. So I'll tell you where in Boise those areas can flood, when that could be, and how to find out if a home you are interested in purchasing, whether it's in Boise or somewhere else, is in a flood risk area. Okay, so as I said, the flood risks here are very low, and that is largely due to our high desert climate. I have a video all about the Boise, Idaho area weather too, so I will link that down below in case you haven't seen it yet. But Boise averages less than 12 inches of rain a year, less than 20 inches of snowfall a year, with the average depth of snowfall being 1 inch when it snows, and our record rainfall in one day in 1958 was just under 2 inches. So if we have any flooding events in the area, it's from heavy snowfall that melts quickly in the spring and overwhelms the creeks and rivers, and not from massive rainfall events. So then, where are those creeks and rivers that could flood in the Boise area? This is a map of the Boise River drainage system. You can see that the Boise River system originates in the Sawtooth Mountains. So as the snow melts, it feeds into the large rivers like the North Fork, the South Fork, and Morris Creek. These are all beautiful and amazing rivers in the mountains that you should go visit sometime. And then there are storage reservoirs at Arrow Rock, Anderson Ranch, and Lucky Peak. The dam at Lucky Peak is not only for hydropower, but it also helps control the water flow from the river. Before the dam was built, there was actually a large flooding event from the Boise River in Boise that ruined parks and roadways in 1943. So even with the dams now, sometimes the snowpack combined with the timing of a quick snowmelt can cause some flooding. That was the case in 2017 when, after that year of Snowmageddon, the big snow of 2016, the Boise River spilled over its banks and caused damage to the greenbelt paths and some homes and businesses that backed right up to the river. Part of the issue that year was that we still had snow in the valley when the temperatures rapidly warmed, so the ground was already saturated. This year we did have record snowfall in our mountains, but we have dry ground here in the valley right now, and the weather has not gotten very warm very fast so far. So our river is rising as they let water out of the reservoir at Lucky Peak. And here's a bit of the video of the higher river from today, which was mid-April 2023. And you can see that some of the pathways are getting covered if they are low-lying. So this is actually pretty normal for us. It happens almost every year. But see how the water here is pretty low before the walkway of this hotel in Eagle? In 2017, the water was right up to the top of this walkway. So there was definitely quite a bit more water then. And then beside possible flooding from the Boise River, there are a few major creeks in the area that come off of the Boise River. There's 5 Mile Creek, 10 Mile Creek, and Indian Creek. Both 5 Mile and 10 Mile creeks have been engineered to really reduce flooding risks. So it is highly unusual to have a home along one of those creeks that would need flood insurance. Indian Creek runs mostly through Caldwell and into Kuna. Now, it did flood in 1910. It actually has a very interesting history, but I'm not going to get into that. But you can Google Indian Creek and Caldwell and find out about the history. But the engineering has also been done to mitigate flooding risks of Indian Creek. And then there is another creek that many homes in northwest Boise and Eagle back up to, which doesn't actually originate from the Boise River. That is Dry Creek, and it originates from snow runoff and springs up on Bogus Basin. Dry Creek does also have a possibility of flooding, but engineering has also been done in the neighborhoods around it to try to mitigate the risk. Here's a video I took from today, mid-April 2023. We do have that larger snowpack that's melting, and right now Dry Creek is way below flood level. It would be pretty rare for Dry Creek to flood, but it could happen. So then where do you look for homes if you want to avoid living in a possible flood area in the Boise, Idaho area, or any state for that matter? Well, first, I'll tell you what information to be very cautious of, and that is the information regarding flood risks you see on Zillow or Realtor.com. I don't know where they get their data. Sometimes it's from FEMA and it can be accurate, but other times I have no idea. I had a client bring that to my attention. She was ruling out homes because she said that Realtor.com showed that those homes had a high flood risk. So when she told me the addresses, I was telling her from the FEMA maps and from my own knowledge of the areas that there was no risk for flooding in those areas. So for example, here is a pending listing in Star, Idaho on Realtor.com. If you scroll down, you can see that the flood risk for this home is listed as major. It says that the flood risk from this house comes from climate change and precipitation. Okay, so for sure this house will not flood due to excessive rain. And I have no idea where they are pulling data that Boise's climate is somehow changing to have increasing precipitation to be worried about. So how do I confirm for a client that the house isn't in a FEMA flood zone? That's where the FEMA flood zone mapping comes in so handy. So if you're curious about verifying flood ratings from websites or about any home you're considering purchasing, go to the FEMA website, click on the flood information section, click on the mapping, and then you can put in an address. When I put in the address of that home in Star from Realtor.com, you can see that there is absolutely no flood risk and it's not even close to a flood zone. However, because I know the area, I know that it is near an underground irrigation canal. Sometimes online real estate websites think that a home has a higher flood risk if it is near an irrigation canal. So I suppose that could be true if something caused the canal to break and you were lower than it, but the irrigation canals here are all very tightly controlled by the irrigation companies, and they can control the flow and immediately stop it if needed. They also only have water in the canals from April to October, so they can't get flooded in the winter if we did happen to have extra snow or rain. So FEMA and lenders don't consider living by an irrigation canal a flood risk. For another example, I put in an address of Taleo Winery in Garden City, which is right by Boise because I know it's near a flood zone right on the river. So you can see the flood maps do show the risk of flooding and the amount expected were there to be a flood. As I move the map around heading west, closer to Eagle, you can see that these areas, which are very popular and very sought after neighborhoods to live along the Boise River, you can see that they do have a high risk of flooding and may require flood insurance. Now, that being said, I do know that back in 2017, homes whose backyards were very close to the river did get flood damage, but beyond that, homes and streets were just fine. So although it would be incredibly rare for outlying homes close to the river to flood, nature is nature, and so FEMA puts them in a 100-year flood zone rating just to cover the bases as it could happen. While flooding in the Boise, Idaho area is very rare, it can happen around the Boise River and a few creeks. When we work with clients who are purchasing near areas that could possibly be in a flood zone, we always use the FEMA maps to look it up and to confirm, and have them check with their lenders as well to see what data they have. And you can either check for yourself on a FEMA map if you see a house online that says it has a high flooding risk, or you can ask an actual real estate professional who lives in the area, like me and my team, instead of just believing what the computer system generates for information on the real estate websites. But just know that the Boise, Idaho area will not get enough excessive rain to cause widespread flooding as you see in the news in Florida or Texas or California. And of course, I suppose never say never, but it would be a total anomaly. If you want more information about moving to the Boise, Idaho area or living here or buying a home in the Boise, Idaho area, please go to my website, summerastonrealestate.com. You can contact us there to set up a time to chat, get all kinds of helpful guides, find more information on each city in the area, download a tour map if you're coming for a visit. You can follow us on Instagram at Summer Aston Real Estate for more daily posts about Boise and real estate in Boise, Idaho area. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, I'm going to try not to think about the flooding that would happen if the Lucky Peak Dam ever broke.